all of the sessions. So if you miss something, or even if you want to review something, you can go to our YouTube channel and check it out. Okay, let's see here. So the way this works is for every session, I'll assign you a point in the book up to which you should have gotten. Hang on, let me tell these guys. You're all going to get this message, but it's really just for... I'm so sorry about this, guys. It's really annoying. Scott is sending you a new link. Okay. Everybody's going to get that message, but everyone disregarded except for Vladimir, who's in another room. Okay, so here's how it works. Every week I'll give you a point in the book up to which you should have read. Of course, feel free to read ahead, finish the whole book if you like. Some of you, as I mentioned before, have already read this book. Considered a classic of anti-war science fiction. You know, all the anti-war science fiction books. I'll put up a PowerPoint presentation just for visual cues and to pick out, there's Vladimir again. Hey, Vladimir, go ahead and stop. Scott is sending a new link to the TOEFL.
Okay.
Students. Sorry about all this.
Okay.
All right.
Don't bother.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay. So, but for this first session, no reading required. We're just going to talk a little bit about the book in general. We're going to talk about Kurt Vonnegut, one of the great weirdos. Beloved of many, myself included. I'll go ahead and put up, oops, just one second. Here we go. This presentation. There we go. All right, does everyone see my shared screen? So, where to begin? Oh yeah, as I was saying before we were interrupted, this is a good subject for a 6-week group. It's relatively short, it's engaging. It's also a very good book if you are learning English. Kurt writes in a very quotidian voice. He uses everyday English. He uses short, punchy sentences. It's very easy to read. It flows very nicely. The first time I read this book, I wound up reading it in one sitting. I just got really into it, and before I knew it, it was 4 o'clock in the morning and I was done. It's like that. So if you feel compelled to continue reading past whatever we've assigned to you, feel free to do so. All right. First, a little bit about the man himself, Kurt Vonnegut. As I said, one of the great weirdos. Dropped out of college to join the army, wound up getting shipped off in World War II to fight against the Nazis. That figures heavily into this book and into some other work of his. In fact, we will sometimes mention some of the other Vonnegut books. We're not going to go too deeply into them. I mean, of course, not everybody will have read everything. Honestly, I haven't read all of his books either. But you'll notice, if you do read other Vonnegut books, that he has a universe. He has characters who cross over in the other books, one of whom will definitely be mentioned in this little presentation, one of the most interesting ones. Some of you may already know who I'm talking about. But yes, Kurt Vonnegut, I'll just give you his description of himself. Oh, yeah, we've got more people. I'll give you his description of himself from the opening of this, our book, Slaughterhouse 5. Hello? New folks? Is everybody present? Let's see. Do you hear us, Alexa?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I
Great.
do hear. I'm sorry, I'm late.
No, it's no problem. Okay. So this is how he describes himself in the opening of Slaughterhouse 5. A fourth-generation German-American now living in easy circumstances on Cape Cod and smoking too much, who as an American infantry scout, hors de combat, we'll talk about what that means in just a sec, as a prisoner of war, witnessed the firebombing of Dresden, Germany, the Florence of the Elbe, a long time ago, and survived to tell the tale. This is a novel somewhat in the telegraphic, schizophrenic manner of tales of the planet Tralfamador, where flying saucers come from. You might be asking yourself, how is this a war novel with flying saucers and aliens? Well, you're going to find out. Believe you me. Hors de combat. It's an interesting, or it should be noted what that phrase means. A French military phrase signifying that an individual or body of men are so completely beaten as not to be able to maintain the field of battle. Well, you'll notice that throughout the book, there's a certain exhaustion. He has a traumatized voice. I like to say that he has a wounded voice, actually. That's how I've described it in the past. The way that he expresses himself, as I said a little while ago, in these very short, punchy sentences, but there's something also, I don't know, sometimes a little childlike, almost. That's the wounded voice. You'll see what I mean as we go forward. Some quotes. He was a funny guy. To be is to do, Socrates. To do is to be, Sartre. Doobie-doobie-doo, Sinatra. I just want to give you a little flavor of Vonnegut. This one really hits different these days. True terror is to wake up one morning and discover your high school class is running the country. You know, this particular quote seems a little tame in retrospect. Other people can wind up running your country too. Oops, okay. The opening line of the story is important. He immediately tells us all this happened, more or less. That's all we're going to get into the story itself this time. As I said, you don't need to have read anything for today's session. Don't panic and think that I'm getting into the book, really. He tells us right from the start, all this happened, more or less. We should take this as something like biographical. I guess it's up to you to decide what the more or less is. Okay, I just realized we have someone twice. Well, let's talk about the part that is certainly something that happened, and I mentioned before the firebombing of Dresden. So this story takes place from the perspective of a prisoner of war of the Germans, which Kurt Vonnegut was. So this is the biographical part. Kurt Vonnegut was present for the firebombing of Dresden, and he was a prisoner of war held by the Nazis. It was a conventional arms bombing, not a nuclear bombing. Saturation bombing. Now, not to jump ahead too much, but that's a point of contention. It's a controversial bombing. This happened some months before the end of World War II, although, okay, the reason it's controversial is that it's widely believed that the bombings at this point in the war really served no purpose. The German army was already broken, and this was really kind of an over-the-top, vulgar display of power. Absolutely incinerated the city, as you can see from the picture of Dresden. The points of contention, some people say that it was a strategically valuable location for the German forces. There are also claims that these were strategic and, let's say, carefully chosen locations for the bombing, but clearly that is not the case. You can tell just by looking at the picture that locations were not picked out in particular. That's where the controversy comes in over this bombing. Was it really something that needed to be done? Dresden was considered a cultural center. The city was currently full of German refugees, people who didn't want to fight. So there's that. Now you might say, why are we going around being all sympathetic with Nazis? Well, it's not quite like that. I'm not sure, what I should say else about this, aside from look into it. It is an ongoing controversy. I'll say that I, for one, think that the bombing was certainly unnecessary, but it is what it is. In any case, our man Kurt Vonnegut was there. And that wounded voice that I mentioned before, well, that's where he picked it up. Slaughterhouse 5, by the way, I didn't put it into the slideshow. Slaughterhouse 5 refers to the slaughterhouse where the prisoners were kept. They were kept in a slaughterhouse. Everybody knows what that means, right? Like an abattoir, a place where animals are killed for food. He was kept in there with some of his compatriots and some American and some British soldiers. Okay. The book itself, first published in 1969. This is important because, well, for those of you who know your history, that was, in America at least, that was the time of great protest. There was a very vibrant and growing anti-war movement, probably the biggest one that the US has seen. I mean, there still are anti-war movements in the US, but certainly not as impactful as those in the late 60s. And of course, this book fell on fertile ground. Everybody was very glad to read it. It was gobbled up by the public, got good reviews. He had written some novels before this that went more or less unrecognized until later, after this one that really got him noticed. Just a sec. Story centers around Billy Pilgrim. This picture comes from, there is a film adaptation of this movie. Film adaptations, take them or leave them. This one's okay. It's from 1972. It's worth watching just if you're interested. Of course, they never really work out as they should. On the subject of Kurt Vonnegut film adaptations, really quick, there is an adaptation of Breakfast of Champions, which is interesting in its own right, but misses a lot from the book. That's another Vonnegut novel. And there's also an adaptation of Mother Night. I would actually recommend that one. Out of all the adaptations I've seen of Kurt Vonnegut novels, this is probably the best one. Mother Night, check it out. Nick Nolte, who's also in Breakfast of Champions. A character from Mother Night, in fact, appears in Slaughterhouse 5. As I mentioned earlier, Vonnegut writes in his own universe, even appearing as God in one of his books, because he is the God of that book. He's having a conversation with someone and he says, I can just write something into your hand. Okay, never mind, not to digress. Yes, this is our Billy Pilgrim. a friendly and humble man, friendly even when others are not friendly to him. And yeah, you can see him here being captured. Some of the themes of this book: trauma and the horrors of war. You could say that it's kind of a meta theme, mental health in general. The wounded voice. We'll be talking a lot about that. The horrors of war. Time and free will. Well, not to spoil it. Maybe I shouldn't, for those of you who haven't read it. Time is, let's just say, a little fluid in this book. I'm sorry, I'm debating in my head how much I should spoil, and I'm deciding very little should be spoiled. Should wait for you to read it if you haven't. So free will, as it relates to time, is something certainly that we're going to be touching on. By the way, these are not the only themes, they're just major themes. Materialism, as you'll see, our character after the war. Religion. You might have noticed that Billy's name is Billy Pilgrim, which by itself has some valence in that area. Small spoiler, he's a chaplain's assistant and an optometrist in the story. His function in the army is chaplain's assistant. That's not even a chaplain. Arbitrariness. Is everybody familiar with the word arbitrary? Arbitrary means without reason. Arbitrary means without any cause or purpose. Now, for those of you who were in the previous reading group, I can tell everybody here, we did The Plague by Camus, and absurdity is a major theme. It's central theme, really. I will be occasionally tying it back to that previous group because it certainly is expressed in this book quite a bit. And a phrase that you'll hear over and over in this book and expresses arbitrariness very succinctly is the phrase, "So it goes." "So it goes" is a phrase you're going to become very familiar with as you read this book. It appears at the end of many of the paragraphs. I would just like for you to sort of take note every time you notice the phrase and see what you connect it to in the paragraphs in which it appears. You'll notice a theme, a trend. That phrase appears in certain places. I mentioned earlier that we would be talking about some of the characters who appear in other Vonnegut books, and one of them who appears in our book is Kilgore Trout. Kilgore Trout is arguably the most important recurring character in Kurt Vonnegut's books. There is a birth and death date for this fictional character because that's what it says on his tombstone in one of the stories. Kilgore Trout is getting special mention here because he's so central to so many of the stories. Or, okay, look, in some of the stories, he just appears as a second-hand figure. Somebody will read a story, and in the story you're reading, the narrator says, "I read this crazy story by a man named Kilgore Trout." And it goes blah, blah, blah. So throughout the works of Kurt Vonnegut, you get these stories that are written by Kilgore Trout. Sometimes they're explained in some detail, and sometimes they're explained in one sentence. A story about a money tree, and the leaves were dollar bills, and the fruits were coins, and people gathered around it to fight, and the blood made very good fertilizer. like that's the whole story. In any case, he gets a special mention because he's a very special character. He is a stand-in for Kurt Vonnegut himself. Now, Kurt Vonnegut says that Kilgore Trout is really based on Teddy Sturgeon, who's another science fiction writer, contemporary with Kurt. But yeah, it's pretty clear that it's Kurt himself, especially in some of the stories. Breakfast of Champions, in particular, gets some special mention here because Kilgore Trout is a central character in that particular story. What else? Well, there's not much else we're going to talk about as far as the book. In our first real session, the one next Wednesday, I asked that you will have at least read chapters 1 and 2. Like I said, very quick reading, even if you're very busy. It shouldn't pose any serious problems for you to get through chapters 1 and 2. Any questions so far? Is everybody clear? Nicola, yes?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, this is not about the current lecture, but you mentioned the plague from Camus.
Yes.
Yeah. Does that mean that you do these kind of book readings regularly?
Yes, we are planning on maintaining them. We don't have any plans to stop doing them. We're going to keep doing them, especially if we get interest. So yeah.
Okay, and I have just one small follow-up question. Could it be possible that some of us maybe influence the choice of books on
Perhaps.
Oh, okay.
Perhaps.
Okay.
There are a few things like we generally go for shorter works because we want to, put forward a sort of realistic commitment that busy people can get behind,
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
Relatively short, like novellas.
Yeah.
And I tend to lean towards works with some philosophical content,
Yeah.
to some extent at least. Oh, wow, I see that my name has reversed. International Academic Center.
For example, I'm sorry if I'm interrupting, but for
No.
example, if you gave us a list and then maybe we, I don't know, choose from it. So it
that's a possibility.
For both of us, yeah.
We might even. Oh wow! Do you guys see the captioning there?
Yeah.
That's crazy. I just put that on by accident, and it seems to be working.
Nice.
Interesting. I'm gonna leave it and see if it does anything funny. There's nothing better than captions that are messed up. Look at that.
That's actually on team with Kurt.
Be there. Yeah.
Excuse me, Jason, just
Yes.
one question. I also have one question. Did you put that previous course or sessions on the plague on YouTube?
Yes.
If you could share the link just by the end of this session, it would be really nice.
Sure, but in case I forget, which I won't, if I do forget, then just email me. Otherwise, just go to our YouTube channel. You'll see all the sessions there.
Well, what's the name of the YouTube channel? I'm sorry, I'm the first time in this.
No. It's International Academic Center, Belgrade.
Thank you.
Wow, the captioning recognized Belgrade. That makes me feel happy. Okay. What else? So, yes, as far as some practical matters, we want to make sure, of course, that everybody has a copy of the book. I'm sure many of you have a copy already. I'll say this first. Those of you who are fast, quick like a bunny, can get to Vulcan, and Vulcan actually has physical copies of this book in English. They were even on sale. I don't know how many copies they have, but I know that many people, and I count myself among that number, prefer having a physical copy. Nothing quite like it. So that's one way to get a copy. Aside from that, you can order one from Amazon. They have physical and e-versions. And if neither of those is a possibility for you, then we can find a way to get you a copy. just, I would say email me, and we'll find some way of getting you a copy. Yeah, that's that. That's that part. What else? What else? Yeah, as I said, this is just an introductory thing. Speaking of introductions, I haven't even introduced myself. My name is Jason, as you can see on the screen. Some of you know me from previous reading groups. Some of you know me as the test prep guy at IAC. At IC. But it's nice to meet you all. Oh, cool, it said e-meet. I'm going to just mess with this thing all the time. Yeah, and that's how it will go. Also, if you are reading some part of the book and you feel particularly moved by something that you read, you can email me and ask me to put it in the slideshow. So that we can be sure to have the quote up on the screen. I like to do it that way. I would say try not to do it, on the day of. Preferably do it sometime before, at least a day before, preferably more. Because that's how we do this. We pick out some excerpts, some quotes, we put them up on the screen, we talk about them, we make connections. And as I mentioned in the email, the first email, we like to keep the atmosphere pretty relaxed. So we are allowed to digress a bit, and kind of wander into other areas of conversation that are sparked by the story, as long as we don't swim too far from the shore. Yeah. So that's really all there is for this first meeting. It's just a chance for us to say hi and for me to explain how this thing goes, so that there are no surprises, and for you to make sure that you're interested in participating in this group. Hopefully I've sufficiently charmed you all. Yes, Nicola?
Oops, sorry, misclick.
That's all right. So are there any questions? Do you guys have a clear idea of how this will work? Is there anything you would like to know?
How long will our next session be?
It's pretty loose. We usually go for an hour and a half, but it has gone over occasionally. But we usually shoot for an hour and a half.
Okay.
So plan on that. And I mean, I'm open to staying on for longer if if everyone's having a good time and we're having a good talk. So, it's kind of up to us. There's nothing forcing us to stop, so you can stay on as long as I guess even if I have to go, I can just pass on the meeting to someone else. You guys can keep talking. Okay. Is everybody clear on everything? Everything related to the reading group. Obviously, we're not all clear on everything in the universe. Not yet. Okay. Well, in that case, I know it was a short session, but I just wanted to kind of give you guys a little taste and show you what it's all about. Let's see. Yeah, we have a pretty good number of people showing up. That's good to see. I hope you'll all come back next Wednesday. And don't forget, email me if you have some issue with getting a book. Am I seeing a... What is that?
That's a yes.
Oh, that's a yes. Okay. I'm like, that's not a raised hand.
I'm playing with the functions, sorry.
No, that's fine. Yes, Nevena?
I can add something that there is a site on that site, and many other books very useful for.
Yes, I've heard of that. Oink.
There's also, if we're talking about this weekend,
Nobody's.
there's the site called. It's a Russian site and has a lot of books. About a lot of topics. So
Yeah,
you can also search by author by the serial number and everything. And also for us here in Serbia, Book Depository, which is I think a British site, is maybe slightly better than Amazon regarding the delivery dates and the shipment costs and everything. I mean, the shipments is free, so yeah.
great. Yeah, of course. I encourage you guys to get, legit copies. And that will be all that I say about that.
Yeah. We wouldn't want to be caught. That's not nice.
Yeah, I don't promote that kind of thing. That's
yeah, of course.
Just okay. So in that case, I will see you all next Wednesday at 6 o'clock. I will send you the link beforehand, just like this time, and that's that for now. Okay.
Goodbye.
Bye. Nice meeting all of you.
Bye bye.
Nice meeting
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
You
Bye
too.
bye.